And now, ladies and gentlemen, we move on to the next discussion that explores another powerful force shaping our cities, GCC, or Global Capability Centers. Now, our next session is a panel discussion titled GCCs as Urban Anchors, Their Role in Shaping Mobility Policy. This conversation will explore GCCs as major employers and urban stakeholders, how they can play a transformative role in influencing mobility planning, sustainability, and initiatives, and commuter behavior. Now, for this, allow me the pleasure of welcoming on stage our moderator. We have Mr. Mohit Mohan, founder of More Advisory. And accompanying Mr. Mohit, we have our distinguished panels. We have Ms. Chetana, Parashar, Director, HR 711 GSC, Mr. Sumit Gupta, Country Head, Telstra, India, Mr. Venkatesh Gopalan, Site Leader, Capability Center, Philips, and Mr. Vinodh Ramachandran, Senior Director and India Site Head, ARKO Corp. Requesting our dignitaries to kindly join us on stage and take your seats as we dive into our next topic of conversation and discussion, GCCs as urban anchors, their role in shaping mobility policy. Thank you, panelists, for joining us and being a part of our Mobility Symposium 2025. We are looking forward to your insights that you will be sharing on our stage today. Mr. Mohit, I'll leave it to you to spearhead this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, and really exciting to be here. But I must say, Dr. Kalpana, I felt like continuing to listen to the inspirational work you're doing. So kudos to that. But what we're going to talk about today is about a sector that's what's called as Global Capability Center. I'll refer to it as GCCs. So I'm hoping with my eclectic panel I have here, we'll talk a little bit about it. But just to set the tone, this is the sector that's seen phenomenal growth. So if you think about it over the last decade or so, and projected to go at about 11 to 12% year-on-year CAGR, right? So that's significant. One of the fastest growing sectors, creating a lot of employment in the country today. So it's an exciting space to be. But at the backdrop of it, and today's panel discussion is really going to talk about urbanization and how that's kind of impacting and how this sector is hoping to influence some of the things that we spoke about earlier today. It was really inspirational to speak, hear some of the others like Sharath and Shri Tejaswi Surya talk about it. But I'm hoping that some of this is actually going to be, we can translate this into something meaningful today in this panel discussion. One of the things that I think about is, if you think about the commute, this sector employs about 2 million people. And, the city alone accounts for a significant portion of that. And what's more intriguing is this sector commutes about over hundreds and thousands of employees every single day. So what it's actually doing is it's influencing traffic patterns. It's actually influencing urbanization, right? So I'll actually, before we open it up, one of the things I go back to about a decade ago, and I was traveling a train in the city of Boston, and right next to me, I saw the president, the company I used to work for. He was on the same train. Now, having come from a very hierarchical culture, I was like very intrigued by why I was the president of the organization traveling by train. So I actually mustered up the courage and I went to him and I said, hey Ron, I'm just curious, wouldn't driving into the city make it a lot more convenient for you? And what he said actually has stuck in my mind. He said, the subway system is so effective and efficient that it actually gives me a better quality of life, right? So think about it. So, I wanted to set the tone today by actually saying, I think an advanced city, and we want to aspire to be there, is not where the poor can afford a car, but it's where the rich use the public transportation system, right? So with that, I wanted to, welcome my panel here. I'm really looking forward to it. The panel here has been carefully curated across sectors, across domains. So I have a representation from HR, from technology, from analytics, finance. So I think it's a great representation of leaders, CXOs, and I'm hoping that there's going to be some great takeaways today. So I'm going to actually open it up with my first question, and I'm going to open it up to all of you. I'm just going to look at my cue cards for a quick second. So, as you think about GCCs in general, and the GCCs you all represent, each of you represent multi-billion-dollar organizations. How do you think that's actually influencing traffic patterns? Anyone?
Okay, can I go first? Okay, first of all, thank you, Mohit, for the opportunity, and thank you to Move and Singh as well. My name is Sumit Gupta. I lead the Global Capability Center for Telstra in India. Telstra is one of the largest telecom providers in Australia. So I think Mohit already spoke about how the GCCs are now one of the fastest growing sectors of economy. And GCCs are more than that now. They are actually innovation engines for the headquarters. And as we've already crossed the headcount mark of 2 million, GCCs still continue to grow at a rate of 14 to 15% CAGR. And one of the reports last year suggested that more than 500 new GCCs will be set up in India in the next 5 years. So it's big, but it's growing fast. I mean, that's a message, right? Having said that, GCCs, most GCCs run their operations in a staggered manner throughout the day. Having started working for an Australian company, I've come to realize that we start our operations at 2:30 in the morning, and so our employees need to be at work by 2:30 in the morning. And if you are a US West Coast based companies, your employees are leaving the office around 2:33 in the morning. So Bangalore from that perspective is now a 24/5 city. I could say 24/7, but largely 24/5 city now. And that's an opportunity, and then that's a challenge for us, and we can talk more about that as we progress. Thank you.
So I can go. Venkatesh, I lead the Philips Capability Center in Chennai, and I'm also the finance leader. For us, it's a different challenge, I would say, right? We are multi-site in India, so we have a large presence in Bangalore with 4,000 odd people, mainly on product development, R&D. We have a functional capability out of Chennai, and we have an innovation and factory in Pune, actually. But ours is predominantly supporting Europe, so which actually is a different kind of a problem because we start at 12 and finish at 9, but we are not covering like a 24/7. But still that mobility challenge does come in because those are typically peak hours for us. When we start, most of the European companies are predominantly starting at that. So we do have that challenge in terms of concentration of mobility at the same point. So.
I'm Chetana. I lead the HR practices at 7-Eleven Global Solution Center. I think we started peak COVID. So for us, mobility wasn't one of the things that we were thinking about firsthand because everybody was sitting at home. But as we grew as an organization, went into the multiple years, I think one of the things that we shifted focus was to have employees come in. So for us, mobility was just not about how we're transporting or how the employees are transporting, but it's also about where they're living. So I think choosing the right location was critical for us to be able to stay in a smart city where a lot of our employees actually live within the vicinity, which kind of helps us. I think there are multiple ways that we're contributing to how mobility means to us, but it'll be interesting to know and talk more about how the influence is going to be on different organizations. Of course, US-based organizations, the time checks are different, but how do we give that flexibility to employees to still feel the office space for themselves and yet be at home at the same time to be able to cater to work? I think that's been a focus really for us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vinodh Ramachandran. I lead a small GCC. We are brand new, about less than a year old. And I don't have a lot of employees in Bangalore. We have about 55. We'll get to about 100 by the end of the year. We are a fuel and convenience store retailer, competitor to 7-Eleven, so we're in the same panel. On a lighter note, I feel we are already contributing to the decongestion of Bangalore. We don't come to office. I'm finding it increasingly difficult to get my team members to come to office. Thanks to the traffic, thanks to Hebal flyover, thanks to the metro construction. I really hope my daughter gets to ride the metro someday on Outer Ring Road. But I think the problem obviously is close to my heart because I really want people to come to the office at least 2 days a week. So my problem is, how do I get people into work? And it's always the commute time that is the reason that comes from the associates, right? And I really wish we had better insights about where people stay or when we hire, so we are able to kind of choose an office location. I mean, effectively leveraging data. I come from a data and analytics background, so I definitely think that there is a lot of data out there that can be leveraged, but my problem is, we need to solve this fast so I can get people to work.
Thanks, Vinodh. And I think that was truly spoken from the heart. But talking about the heart, Sumit, maybe I'm going to actually go to the mind now. You spoke about a sector that's growing significantly. It's creating millions of jobs, and it's projected to continue to create millions of jobs. And now, I think one of the things, if I could, be bold enough to say that in some ways, the sector has been users of the infrastructure and mobility. Not necessarily being thought leaders. I think some of the best minds work in this sector in the country, but it's been, if I would say, a backseat, experience so far. So if you were to actually change that, and the question really is, can GCCs actually influence policy making? And if so, what's your take on that?
No, I think it's a great question. I mean, if I look at GCCs around me, and this is a great panel to be on, I think there is tremendous amount of leadership capability in GCCs. We have senior business leaders, technology leaders, operations leaders, thought leaders. GCCs are hiring some of the best talent right now in India. And I think GCCs face the same challenges of urban mobility as everyone else. The roads don't treat people differently just because you work for a GCC. And so I think, and exactly to the point that you just made, I think we all want our employees to come back to the office, for part of the time, and we all face great resistance from them. So I think we have a skin in the game. We absolutely want to help in whichever way we can through public-private partnerships, any amount of data that we can provide, any amount of our leaders who can come together and spend time on these initiatives. However, for any of this to be effective, ultimately needs to be owned by the city. The city needs to stand up and say, I need help, this is what I need help with, and can you provide resources, data, technology people to help figure this out together? I can't speak for all the GCCs, but I have a feeling that most GCCs would raise their hand and say we are more than willing to help because we have full skin in the game and our objectives are completely aligned.
Great, thanks Sumit. Anyone else wants to add? I mean, just, obviously you all represent large tech parks in the city and of course outside the city, Venkatesh. Is there corporate advocacy that can actually influence some of this? As you think about how work movement happens or people movement happens within these tech parks?
Yeah, I definitely feel, I think it's both ways, right? It's just not only I would say the government or the body playing a part. I would say equally mindset change within the GCC has to happen a lot, right? The question is, do we really want to have a 3-shift? Do you want to do a 24/7? Is it really important? Could there be less coverage? I think we also need to be open in terms of asking those questions, because right now we try to mirror everything to the parent organization or whoever we serve. But maybe that's a wider question for us to ask, do we really require 24/7? Can we relook at that whole model itself and be open to change? I think we do play a big part in that in terms of coming with some solutions. And to Sumit's point, definitely, I would definitely say, right, I don't think we all have skin in the game here. I think everyone would probably put their hands up if there's a requirement coming in. There could be project management capability, there could be resource capability where GCC can actually partner with the government to actually play a part actually here.
And I also feel, I think with a lot of recent push towards tier 2 and tier 3 cities from the government to kind of decongest the tier 1 cities, I really feel GCCs are playing but can play a significant role there as well. The biggest challenge or roadblock I feel is talent availability and willingness of people to kind of move there. So I think if we have a skin in the game, seat at the table, there is definitely an opportunity for us to influence, at least personally for me, that decision. How can we build not just a talent ecosystem, but like how can people have a great life even outside of, I mean, I'm not saying it's great now, but then I mean, it has to be thought through like from a holistic standpoint. It cannot be just, hey, I'm opening a GCC in Coimbatore, you have to move there, right? That's not going to work. So you really have to entice people to be willing to work in tier 2 and 3 cities. So I see GCCs playing a big part, at least in that policy.
Great, thanks, everyone. So, I'll keep the kind of questions going at my panel. So, Chetana, I know we have had several conversations in the past about employee well-being, keeping, the experience in the center. So, as you think about, employee experience, is that a part of your EVP strategy, especially when it comes to mobility, when people are commuting back and forth from work?
Mohit, what is one of the most common questions that probably, when colleagues meet in the office, right when they enter the office in the morning, what do you think is the most common question or topic that they talk about first?
How long did I say?
Oh, I spent 2 hours in the traffic today. Oh, I spent 15 minutes in the traffic today. Or, hey, I had a great ride to office. It's always about commute. So at 7-Eleven, I think, at least from a culture standpoint, we follow a very simple motto of making lives better. And that statement has everything for us. It's just not about, when I say making lives better, it's just not about compensation for employees. It's just not about a few perks given in office. But it starts from when they're leaving home, because for us, when an employee is coming and spending time in the office, it's literally the maximum time of their day that they spend with their colleagues than with their families, really. So how do you make that as a part of your employee value proposition? So it starts from when they're leaving home. So, of course, today, for the number that we do provide a door-to-door pickup for our employees that really helps them. And I think that's one of the drivers for us that brings employees to the office. I feel extreme pride that even though we have a hybrid policy, but we have 70 to 80% of our employees coming to office every single day. I myself go to office every single day, and I think one of the biggest drivers for me is I don't have to think I have to spend that much time or I have to, find these many ways to reach office. So mobility is definitely important. And I think if we think from an employee experience perspective or just think how it can make life a little more easier for the employee, I think we'll come up with a lot more ideas. But I know, as we grow as an organization, we have to think of sustainability. What are the different options that we can, come up with? Obviously, today, carpooling is the biggest way that we're trying to help. But I'm willing to hear on what other things then come in. But I think employee value proposition is a critical factor for how we deal with mobility in our office. And that's what is one of the drivers to the question of how do we get employees to come to office. I think this is one of the biggest drivers for us.
Thanks, Chetana. One of the things, and Deepesh Deepesh keeps educating me on the hybrid and, the traffic patterns that are kind of forming in the city, that Tuesdays and Thursdays continues to be the peak of traffic that the city sees, not just in Bangalore, but in other metro cities as well. So, I'm just curious that, just a follow-up to that, and I'll open it up to all of you, is hybrid actually complicating? Is it actually decongesting or actually complicating the ecosystem of urban planning and mobility, right? So, which means there's peaks that certain days see rather than actually decongest. So, is it counterproductive? I'm just kind of countering the concept of hybrid here.
Maybe I'll at least talk about Philips, right? So at least I travel to Chennai 3 days a week. I'm there as a site. We do have a hybrid policy. We say 3 days mandate sort of a thing for people to come back. So that's what we feel is more collaborative for us. But that's spread across 5 days. It's not like everybody is just turning up on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So we have teams who consciously make the choice and say, I'll spread my teams across in different dates or different days of the week to come in. So which actually helps a lot in terms of planning. That's one. I think so. It also probably helps a little bit in terms of the city, because not every company does that, right? A lot of people are stuck with those Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And also having that flexibility, saying, I don't have to spend 8 hours. When you come, it's more for collaboration, for a meaningful purpose. So if I'm spending 5 hours, it's fine. I can go home time when it's more optimal for me to travel. I think that helps a lot in terms.
I think it needs more governance in some way, because everybody coming in on Tuesday and Thursday, it's not helping. That's my personal point of view. If there is collaboration across GCCs and we figure out, okay, some companies come in Tuesdays, Thursdays, while others maybe come in Mondays and Fridays or something like that. I know it's going to be difficult, but I really think even within GCCs, we need to talk with each other. We need to kind of make it easy for our associates. You are going to continue to see peaks on Tuesdays and Thursdays unless we do something about it. And in my opinion, it is not helping.
And since you introduced yourself as the data and analytics, I'm going to now put this problem back to you, Vinodh. I think fundamentally there's millions and millions of data that's out there, right? And the question is, are companies, GCCs, and let's say other sectors willing to share this data, right? Which is employee information related to commute to the civic bodies. I think you spoke about public-private partnership. Can that actually help? Just your thoughts about how can we mine that data better?
Personally, I do feel that it will certainly help, right? But data is a huge responsibility, especially about it's PII information, right? So obviously we will anonymize it, mask it, however we want to share it. Even aggregated data of our associates, we could certainly share with the civic bodies. But then, much like, I know AI is not spoken. This is probably the first conference where there is not a lot of AI. Not every session is about AI. But I think we talk about responsible AI, right? And how data has to be secure, privacy needs to be adhered to. There are many tenets, especially when it comes to data sharing, that we need to be mindful of. But in spirit, I certainly would love to see data kind of driving decisions and enabling the civic bodies to make better decisions. But I really hope, again, on a lighter note, I'm not getting someone from Bajaj Finance at my doorstep, right? So that is the only thing, because I'm sure you've all experienced getting calls from Bajaj Finance and you don't know where they got your phone number from, right? So I definitely don't want that to happen just by sharing data and, everybody knows everything about me. So that is my biggest concern, but certainly would love to share.
I'll just add that. No, I totally agree that, you can anonymize the data, remove the PII components of the data, but if you think about it, I mean, like Move and Sync is one of the largest urban mobility platform companies, right, in India. They actually have a lot of the data. So if their clients can consent and under a safeguard provision, I think Move and Sync itself can provide a lot of the data to the civic bodies to help in decision making. I have a feeling most clients would agree if there were clear safeguards around not getting calls from Bajaj Finance and, home locations, specific details and so on and so forth. But I think definitely data should be a lever as we figure out how to solve this problem. And we already have platform companies like Move and Sync who are in a great position to aggregate that data.
I think I'll double tap on what Venkatesh said, right? I think while all of this is right, I think flexibility is key even when we're talking hybrid. It just helps internal collaboration a lot, that teams are able to decide that we're not here on the same day. There are some teams that come every day, but there are some teams who practically decide that we're going to be here for 3 days. But how do you plan that flexibility around? A lot of that has helped us. On a lighter note, for us, Wednesday is the highest day in office. And that's not because there's the crazy amount of work, but that's because that's biryani day in office. So that's when we have maximum crowd. So from Move and Sync, we know that that's the day that we have our highest fleet of cabs coming into office. But yeah, flexibility is key.
I just have one last thing
Sure.
to add. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
So I think the way we're, at least personally in my current experience, we're looking at time in office not to do work. It is to collaborate, right? So So work hours are actually flexible. We come in at maybe 11, 11:30, we leave at 4 just to beat the traffic, right? So I think we need to maybe get creative about what you want your associates to kind of accomplish by coming into office, and kind of give them some time back with their families. So.
Yeah, that's a good, segue in terms of quality of life. I think that's a very important component of employee experience. But Venkatesh, I'm going to come to you next. We touched upon civic public-private partnership, and you being a finance, control, governance person. I thought you're the best person to answer this question around governance, right? So, as we think about what are those policies that where we need to start formulating, where is it that the public-private partnerships can work, what are those examples? And we've had task forces in the past, we've had different, I would say, government-led efforts, public-private partnerships, and let's be real, I don't think those have worked for us, right? So what do you think we need to do differently, right, to influence this policy making, and what kind of policies?
See, I would say a couple of things, right? One is in terms of us having a seat at the table, a real voice. It's just not a seat, right? Just making sure from a GCC perspective, having a representation to probably shape it a little bit is extremely crucial. The second thing is, I think we talk about governance. What does it mean, right? So for example, you take ORR as example, right? Outer Ring Road. The metro construction is happening on the same, huge amount of traffic, on the same pattern. You also have new GCC or new buildings coming up. So we somehow aren't really coordinating the whole process, right? You can't have both. You can't have new construction coming in, new facilities coming in at the same time, also having big, metro lines coming in. So maybe there needs to be a pause. I'm not saying stop the construction, but there needs to be a pause, for example, saying how do we govern it, make sure, maybe pause it for a year, get the metro done, and then start things, right? So we need to start maybe having more synchronized planning on this one. It's not really helping us. And maybe second thing is, even in this one, how do we make sure with a private, public partnership, at least those 8-9 kilometer stretch is properly maintained, because that will probably help a lot in terms of reducing your congestion right now. Because right now that's a huge problem for us. So for me, definitely having the voice and probably having some sort of basic governance in terms of how do we look at infra, because there's always a catch-up game on infra. How do we make sure those two sync up a little bit will really be useful actually.
Great, thank you, Venkatesh. Just maybe keeping us moving along from a time perspective, I just one question, maybe, and if there's any thoughts around innovation, and I know large corporations like each of yours have sustainability goals, right? So, what kind of efforts is the organization putting today to track some of it around ESG, considering, of course, transportation does contribute to that. So what is the kind of goals that you all have taken? If you can share any innovation around that space.
Maybe I can start. I can share a couple of things that we are doing. And I've got them from my team here. He's a transport leader, does a fantastic job. So one of the things we're done is 100% of our fleet runs on either EV or CNG, right? And that didn't happen in a day. Took a fair amount of investment and work to move from fossil fuel-based, fleet to this fleet. So that's an important part. The second part is, and I think I heard about this in another talk as well. One of the challenges all the companies face is you can put out as many cars on the road as you want, or as few as you want, but they'll still be 40 to 50% unoccupied, right? So that's another area we're constantly looking at data and locations and optimizing our shifts and routes to make sure that one less car on the road is probably the best ESG commitment that you can make. So always optimizing how many cars you put on the road. But and the third is really encouraging our employees to take the metro. It's not always viable from every part of Bangalore, but we provide these feeder routes from metro stations to our offices, and are constantly running campaigns with employees, encouraging them to use the metro as much as possible.
Well said. Anyone else wants to add?
For us, I think it's more, for example, in the Bangalore office, we have 4,000 people. Conscious choice not to use taxis. We normally have buses sort of thing. It doesn't cover the last mile. There's pickup points where employees come in. So that probably helps a little bit, at least to have a little bit of minimized carbon footprint. In Chennai, we consciously say, morning when people come in, they take the cab and come. We provide AC cab, but in the night consciously switch it off a little bit. So at least that takes care of a little bit on the CO2. So it's just a question of how do you, with the current infra, we do it. But I think the problem is very different between Chennai and here. Chennai is a lot more easier from a city right now because of the size and scale to move around. Bangalore will probably take its own while, and as it goes along, as the metro comes in, I think definitely things like can we ask people to get metro passes, travel on metro, giving them the last mile connectivity is where we'll probably focus on.
Great, thank you. I'm seeing the time here, so I'm going to kind of keep us honest on time this time. So let's kind of go to the last segment, and I kept this one more as a rapid fire. So why don't we take a quick 30 seconds, right? If there's one commitment, a bold one, right, that you are committing on behalf of your organization for the next 12 months, I'll pass it on to you to say what is that one bold commitment you would like to do. To either on your behalf, I mean, you do it as an individual or of course as on behalf of the organization. I leave it to you.
However challenging public transport is, I definitely want to commit to all my associates commuting to work using public transport wherever possible.
Well, I'm committing to serving biryanis on Wednesday to reduce the traffic on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Yeah.
For us, it's the carbon footprint. How do we make it happen in terms of really reduce footprint, for make it more safer, whatever means of transport for our employees to come back to work?
I think for us, it's more of how much can we move to EV. I think that's a conscious effort. Great to hear the what has already been achieved by them, but that's something that we would want to get to. But the other thing is also, for ones who don't really use the commute that we provide from the office, how do we incentivize people to carpool? I think that's another thought that we've been putting for our employees to use it. When they're not using the transport given, but you're using your own transport, but you're coming in big SUVs and you're sitting one person in a car and coming in. Yes, all the offices have the space to park, but we're kind of congesting the roads. So how do we commit to that is maybe another thought process.
Great. Kind of brings us to the end of the session, but I liked what in one of the previous sessions Sharath actually said, something to think about for y'all as you grow is land in Bangalore but grow in Karnataka. And again, no biases to any state or city here, but I'm saying I think this goes back to how do we develop our tier 2 ecosystem, right? I think that's also equally important as we think about decongesting the city. I think there's another interesting thing. I think Mr. Tejasvi Surya spoke about the lack of urban planning or urban planners. And as I was kind of coming in here, I read up about this famous urban planner called Jan Gell. And she talks about that a good city is like going for a good party. If you're enjoying it, you're going to continue to stay in the party, right? So I think it's not a choice. I think we have to wake up and make those moves. So on that note, thank you, folks. Really enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks, Mohit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And as did we. Thank you so much for taking the time off and joining us out here and for that brilliant discussion. And I want to especially thank our moderator Mohit for superbly conducting that panel discussion. Requesting all of you to kindly stay back on stage for a quick moment. Mr. Akash, if I could request you to kindly join us on stage and do the honors and present to our moderator and our panelists a token of appreciation for being a part of Mobility Symposium 2025. It's been an honor and a privilege to hear from all of you today. Thank you so much for joining us, sharing with us your insightful, forward-looking discussions. And I must add, it's inspiring to see how GCCs are not just business hubs, but also urban change agents, influencing mobility, sustainability, and city planning in meaningful ways. Thank you, panelists. It's been a privilege. If I could request you all to come to the front of the table, on the forefront of the stage for a quick photo opportunity, please. One more time, let's give them a round of applause for joining us out here this evening and sharing with us your collective thoughts, talking to us about how GCCs are the drivers of urban change agents. Thank you, panelists. And thank you, Mr. Akash, for joining us on stage, doing the honors and presenting our panelists with a token of appreciation.